The one we collect is this one. We're looking wherever we can find any of these. Now, who's this one? Oh, you don't know him? He's Canadian. He's Pumpkinhead.
Oh.
So we are trying to find wherever we can Pumpkinhead. We got that doll, and we've got this one of Pumpkinhead, and we've got we've got the table there, or the chair with a Pumpkinhead seal on it. And we've got this. We're looking for anything, and I keep telling people about, you know, if ever they're at a yard sale or anything and they see a Pumpkinhead, make sure that they set it aside for us. It's surprising how many people don't know anything about Pumpkinhead. And then this general store theme allows us to do a lot of displays of different things. And it's interesting, memories it brings back to people with the different tobacco cans and whatnot, and the cigarette things that when I was going to school, you got those cigarette tins to use for your pencils and so on.
Okay.
And the different pieces of furniture that you see through here have come from, mainly from local stores and so on. This came from the Tweed grocery, and those items came from the Kerr store, which was later Barnett's. And we have a lot of samples of dishes of local schools and churches, and then local crafted items in the far cabinet. This is an interesting feature. I'll let you just go by, and then I'll explain it to you. This was given to us by a lady who had an antique shop in Tweed. Originally it was from a jewelry shop in Toronto, and then they had it in their antique business. But it's interesting because you had 5 or 6 cash drawers, and you had them here. And the clerk could lock his or her drawer, but didn't have to, because each drawer had its own special ring. But the interesting thing is this: you've got a lock compartment with counters, and another lock compartment with counters. And at the end of the day, the boss would unlock these counters, and what he read there had better be what was in the bill. But this is the interesting thing of it. When I look at this, I'm really amazed. Here's what the paper that was on the roll looked like. Which cash drawer was accessed, whether it was cash, charged, received, or paid, the amount, and your customer transaction number. Just like a computer.
Isn't that something?
And that's over 100 years old. Isn't that remarkable? And our prized items are these 2 wee white ones, which were actually made in Tweed.
Oh.
Stuart Warner made radios here. Now, Pigtons, didn't you have radios in MADOC?
Carrie's parents.
Oh, okay.
They did radio and TV.
Yes, I thought so. Yeah.
And then we joined them with the Radio Shack.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
He built the first TV in MADOC.
Is that right? Huh. Was it like this one? That's the earliest TV we have.
It's a lot bigger than that.
Oh yeah.
That's in the library in MADOC.
Okay, that's 1948. And then by 52 you see the difference in the size of it. And now, my heavens, the screens take up half a wall.
That's right.
Oh dear. You almost think as you're right there with it, so yeah. And then in the music gallery, the 3 violins that you see here were made in Tweed in the 1950s. Grant McMillan, who lived just behind here, made the violins. And that Carn organ was, we believe, the first one in St. Cartha's Roman Catholic Church in Tweed. How do you like this lady's dress?
Oh, isn't that something?
Very interesting dress. Wilma Knapp and her husband, Hap, who was the manager of Nichols Chemical in Sulphide, were invited to an elaborate dinner dance in Belleville. And Wilma fretted and fretted. What was she going to wear? What would she wear to that dance? And one night, apparently, she had a dream. And floating through the air and swirling into a dress were nylon stockings.
Oh, you're kidding me.
So she asked all of her friends in the Connect Club to save their nylons, and she cleaned them and dyed them and made the dress out of them. And there was a lady from the public relations of Allied Chemical in New York came up to the sulfide plant, and she was so taken with what Wilma had done, she went back to New York and she contacted this man. His name was Gary Moore, and he had a show, television show, I've Got a Secret.
Yes.
And they would get about 4,000 suggestions every week about having somebody on. Well, she put in Wilma's name, and Wilma was selected, and she went to New York, and she stumped the panel. They couldn't believe that that was made from nylon stockings.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, and so she, they're all from the States. They asked for it in shows and exhibitions, and how did she do it and all. Unfortunately, they had taken pictures, and we have the record here, you know, of how she made the dress, which is really nice, yeah.
Very good.
And then in the Quilt Gallery, we have a variety now. We had for quite a while here the Crazy Quilt up here. And then a lady gave us this County of Hastings quilt that had been done. And I've had several people say, well, why have you got these sitting in here under the body and, or on top of the body, and here when you got these beautiful ones? Well, not all quilts were fancy work quilts.
No.
With a lot of these, when your trousers or your vest or your skirt or whatever coat was done wearing, you didn't throw it out, you cut it into squares, and you made very functional quilts out of them. And this was a very interesting one. We had it on a display of quilts a number of years ago, and the lady next door had put it in, and she told me the story of it, and I said, Joanne, don't you ever let that leave Tweed. Because it had been made by her mother, who had gone to Ray Quinn, who had a menswear shop here, and she'd got those books of patches.
Yes.
That you'd choose for a suit, and she made this out of that. So Joanne had passed away, and then a couple of years ago, Les passed away. And just this last summer, the family was clearing out the house and selling it. And I said to the two girls, don't you let that quilt leave Tweed. Well, what quilt? And I said, that wee one that your grandmother had made from the patches at Ray Quinn's. Oh, they hadn't seen it. And the last trunk in the attic, in the bottom of it, they found this. And they came across and were coming up the front sidewalk, and I happened to be outside, and I said, that's it. And they said, how did you remember? I said, oh, I didn't forget that one. But so we're going to do a display, and we're going to have, I already have Mrs. Thompson's picture. Her son in Peterborough sent this in. So this is the lady who made it. And then I'm going to have a picture of her daughter, Joanne Rogers, who was next door, who first brought it to our attention. And then I'm going to have a picture of Ray Quinn and the Ray Quinn store. And what I'd love to do is to find one of those old books of patches. And, you know, I keep thinking, if Lemoyne West were still alive, I'd ask and see if she had one. Her dad, George West, had a menswear store for years in MADOC, and all but probably got pitched out, because I don't know whether there are any of that West family left, are there? She had a brother, Ken, but I think he died before she did.
Yeah, but I think Ken has Ken's daughter, I think, and I'm not sure if Ken's wife is still living. Chris West.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
And we do have a royal family exhibit. We collect from Queen Victoria to Queen Elizabeth. The later generations we haven't been doing because we just, there isn't the same appeal to them. I mean, I can remember as a student in the Tweed Consolidated School, they got us on buses, and of course for a village child, to ride on a bus was really something. We went to Trenton when Princess Elizabeth was coming through there. This would have been in the early 50s, I guess. And here we were standing along the curb of the street, and here she comes, bang, and there she went. And I thought, we came from Trenton, or from Tweed to Trenton, waited and waited, and you couldn't see her. She went by so fast. However, that's the way it goes. That wee sewing machine you see there is not a toy. That was my grandmother's sewing machine for herself, her husband, 7 children, and her parents. And here we have samples of this wonderful workmanship that women did. And it's so tragic that it's not appreciated today. And then we have a railroad gallery. At one time there were 2 railroads through Tweed. On the left was the Canadian Pacific Railway station, and that line was from Montreal and Ottawa through Tweed to Peterborough and Toronto. And that came in 1884, and then 5 years later in 1889 came the Bay of Quinte, and that was from Deseronto and Kingston. They joined at Yarkirk and came up through Tamworth, Erinsville, Marlbank, Larkin, Stokely, and Tweed. And then in 1903, it continued northward from Tweed through Bridgewater, Actinolite, Queensborough, Allen Settlement or Cooper, and joined up with the Central Ontario at Bannockburn. But today there's not left. The lights, I got 2 lights from the side of the building before they got destroyed.
Wow.
And then we had a man in Lindsay who contacted us that he had the Tweed sign. And once we had set up our gallery, he said it should come back to Tweed and be here, so we were grateful for that.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now I presume we've got one of these at home.
What is this? I don't think so.
Oh, these are important. You have to protect your toes.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Forerunner of
Safety boot.
the safety boot. Yep.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. And then these.
Tongs? Oh, ice grips, I'll bet.
No, the ice ones were, the handle would be down here. Railroad.
Oh, okay.
Ties like that.
Right. Because the ties were so soaked in creosote, you didn't dare get those in your hand, or else you had infection. So you'd have one at each end of the tie, then catch onto it, and that's how they moved the ties.
You'd have to have strong arms.
Oh
wouldn't you?
yes, yeah, yeah. And then up at the top there, at this end, is a lunchbox, a CPR lunchbox from the early 1900s. And then this is an interesting collection, this. There was a local man, Richard Villeneuve, who he made a lot of these lead soldiers and painted them. And at one time he did a display at the Salvation Army Citadel, and that was part of it. And about a year or so ago now, maybe 2 years, I was walking over on Minnie Avenue, and his brother came out from their house and said, "Would you like some of Richard's figures for the Heritage Center?" I said, "I'd be delighted to have them." "Well, you can choose some." And I said, "No, I would like the family to choose them." And so they selected some and brought them. And fortunately, they brought my favorite. I think this one with a flag. I think he's just priceless. But anyways, they brought them over, and I thought, what am I going to do with them? Because these small things, everything has to be kept behind glass. What am I going to do with them? Where will I put them? And I was walking one day from the post office and looked behind Diller's drugstore, and there in a dumpster was this. And I thought, my Lord, we can't afford to buy something like that. So I fetched it out of the dumpster and brought it here, plugged it in, the lights worked, and it swiveled. So I put the figures that we had in, and I called the family and I said, you've got to come over and see. I've got the perfect display unit for Richard's figures. So they came over, and I had a few set out on the machine. And they were so taken with it. Oh, but you need more. So they brought a pile more, which was wonderful. Yeah. Sadly, Richard died young, and I can't help but feeling maybe lead poisoning.
Oh, is that right?
A lot of people didn't realize working with the lead how dangerous it was.
Well,
And
it will be.
this also is from the Lime Lake Lodge, and some of these are too. I've got to get them in here. Here's one from 1858, and this is 1861. But this was an item. I don't know what in the Orange Lodge it was used for, but it reminds me of the Ark of the Covenant from the Bible. And you'd have a rod go through those rings, and you'd have people, it would rest on the shoulders of people. So I presume in their ceremonies, something like that is it. I find with the Oddfellows, you're able to ask more questions, but with the Orange Lodge, there are a lot of things that they do not want people to know. So I have a file, and I have certain things that are in sealed envelopes that are not available except for a researcher who's working on the Orange Lodge. And this one just came to us from next door as well. This was one of the Tweed telephone operator stools at the switchboard. And this is the...
This is substation for the telephone company.
Yeah, that's a switchboard. Yeah. Now, this is the headset of one of the last operators of the switchboard in Tweed. Her name was Betty Brinson, and she gave that to us.
She's my cousin.
Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah. That, and in fact, if I'm not mistaken, there she is.
Right.
Yeah. Isn't that great? Yeah. That, they live in MADOC now, I think.
Yes.
They sold their home here. Yep. Lovely couple. But I have to laugh, you know, some of the kids will look at it and, what's that? And I said, well, those are the phones you had, and you'd lift this off and put it to your ear, and you crank this, and the operator would come on, number please, and you give the number, and they'd pull the switch from yours and plug it into the one that you're asking for.
This is Ken Cleveland here.
Yeah.
And that's Glenn Franks, I think.
Just a minute. Wait, I should get
That's
the...
Ken Cleveland.
Okay, I in. Ken...
Cleveland.
The way it sounds, the city?
Cleveland, yeah.
Okay, and he was from MADOC?
Well, he was from, his father was Frank Cleveland.
And where did they live? MADOC though?
Well, originally in Remington.
Remington.
Yeah.
Good, okay. Now, did you have another one you said of Frank's?
This one looks like, that looks like Glenn Franks, but I can't say for sure.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I think it's
No.
a bit old for
Maybe.
Glenn. We know this one, Charlie Good. He's still alive. He comes to the Oddfellows Lodge in Tweed here. He's 95. And this is his son, Terry Good.
Oh, okay.
They come from Harlow.
Yes.
And then there was a Ken Gordon of Queensborough somewhere in here. Now, where did they say he was? There was a Ken Gordon. I thought he was along the front here somewhere. Maybe not. A Ken Gordon from Queensborough. But they didn't know who the others were. But at least we got another one here. Ken Cleveland. That's wonderful. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's good. We have here things from the Masonic Temple, the Rebeccas, who no longer operate here, the Eastern Star, they don't operate here anymore. And we have a few things from Orange Lodges. But when you think at one time how many lodges were in the area and what an important role they played in the lives of so many people.
That's right.
But anymore, it's like with the churches. People don't want to take on responsibilities and long-time commitments. And so churches are hurting now even. As I said, the St. James Church of England closed here a couple of years ago. And then we have here the Tweed High School collection. And then we have a local lady who loves glass, and so she did a display of the Depression glass, Eton glass, Cranberry glass, and Carnival glass. And this is our pharmacy exhibit. This is quite a rare item. It used to be when there was a epidemic or a contagious disease in a house, the doctor would have to sign one of these and nail it on the front of the house, warning people not to come near. Usually people burned them when it was passed. It was almost like a stigma. And this family lost a boy, and they kept this thing. I'm glad they did. We don't really appreciate a lot of the concern about contagion now. But you may have noticed the Ontario Heritage plaque on the corner of our property about the 1884, smallpox epidemic that hit the eastern part of Hungerford Township. Over 200 were afflicted and 69 died. And a lot of them had to be buried right on the property. You couldn't take the bodies to a church or a cemetery. It was just too fearful. And they wouldn't allow the people to get on trains to go out. Anybody who tried to go to Belleville, they turned them back at Roslyn. If they tried to get to Napanee, they turned them back at Marlbank. The railway wouldn't allow them on the trains. But it was just so fearful. And, you know, there was another time south of Tweed, there was a family struck by black diphtheria, and in the one night they lost all 7 of their children. Just, you can't grasp it. You just can't grasp it. And here we have, these are items that were made in Tweed at one time. They made golf club heads, there were ceramic industries, different things, and so we keep this collection available there. And then of course, we had the dairy collection with Foster's Dairy being here, and Baker's Dairy and so on. We have the milk wagon out on the driveway. It's covered right now, but...
Chair.
Oh, it was very interesting. When I lived on Metcalfe Street, in the apartment below me, there was a lady who belonged to the Anglican Church, and Father Flexure was retiring, and they were moving to an apartment in Belleville, and Doris Brady said to me, "Oh, you've got to go and see the one chair that Father Flexure has in the rec room. It's really something." So I went up to see it, and I said, "Doris mentioned that you're selling a chair." "Yeah." "Well, how much would you be asking for it?" And he gave a price, and I said, "Oh, Father Flexure, it's worth far more than that." "Well," he said, "if you sell it and get more, you'll have to split the profits with me." And I said, "Well, you'll be not getting a penny because it won't be sold. It's going in the collection." And what it was, he was an insurance agent before he became a priest. And he visited an elderly lady, a friend of the family, and she had in her room 2 of these. And Father Fletcher would always sit in this. And so when she died, in her will, she said, that chair must go to Father Fletcher. And so in Belleville somewhere there's a match to it, at least at one time there was. And it's a beautiful item and comfortable. But I had a group here from, I think it was from the Remington Women's Institute. And this one lady said, oh, she knew a family up in there. They have a whole set, the settee and chairs. I thought, oh, if the day ever comes I don't want it, I'd love it for a setting. However,
Beautiful.
oh, it is, it is. It's heavy, but the trouble is with a lot of these older pieces of furniture, the modern homes just don't have room for them.
No.
They just
No.
don't. And this is our native gallery. You may have noticed the totem pole out at the front too, which was done by 4 local people of native ancestry. And this painting that you see here is really one that I treasure. It was done by a local native girl. She paints on the birch bark and then incorporates feathers and beads with it, which is really remarkable. You don't see that very often. And it's something that I try to promote the native heritage items that we have here, because a lot of people in the Tweed area are of mixed blood.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, many are reluctant to admit it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, no. Yes, I know there's the very uncomplimentary stereotype comments that have been passed and so on. But sorry, your tradition is one to be respected. And so we try as much as possible to promote it. And this is it's not a pram, it's an actual wheelchair for a child. Now, that would belong only to some family that was very wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And the tool collection is from the Connor family. Howard Connor was, if I'm not mistaken, his father had a hardware store in MADOC.
Yes.
Oh, right.
And he was principal of the public school in Tweed for many years. And he taught manual training, and there's one of the benches that he had in the manual training shop. This was the old consolidated school. And up here on this top floor, at the east end, the boys had manual training, and at the other end, the girls had domestic science. And that's what it looked like. You had these benches. And Burton Vance, who was on the school board, was smart enough to grab one before the building was demolished. And then his family gave that to us. But Doug, his one son, shared his love of tools. And when Doug retired from Ontario Hydro and came back to Tweed, he volunteered here. And he told his family that he wanted the tool collection to come to the Heritage Centre. Doug had been such a wonderful volunteer here. Usually at 5 o'clock, I'd have to say to him, Doug, you got to go home, I'm closing. We thank you for coming. We hope you've enjoyed the tour and found it interesting. We hope also that you learned some things about this area. And we would invite you to come back anytime. We've got a lot of research things here. We have people from all over North America who come to do research. And we do research for them as well. We're open throughout the year, Monday through Saturday, 9 to noon and 1 to 5.
Thank you.